Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Formula Podcast. I am your friendly neighborhood host, Trevor Carlson, and I'm really excited to share with you my experiences, experiments, and conversations around travel and designing a fulfilling life in whatever form that really means for you. Today, I am really excited to share a conversation that I had with one of the co-founders of BlinkNow, Maggie Doyne. I'm going to let her talk a bit about what type of work she's done and the difference she's really made with children in Nepal. So her and I really dive into how she got started and how other people can learn to give back and maybe take the path less traveled in their own lives. So hopefully you get a few things taken away from our conversation with Maggie. The connection kind of dropped in and out a bit, but I think we cleaned it up really good, so it turned into an awesome conversation. Now, without me rambling on in this intro any further, let's get this episode started with BlinkNow's Maggie Doyne. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Formula. It's me, your host, Trevor Carlson, here with Maggie Doyne. Maggie is correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, but one of the co-founders of BlinkNow. Would you like to give us like your little background spiel on what BlinkNow is and maybe a little background on how it got started?
Sure. Trevor, thanks so much for having me. BlinkNow is an organization that supports children in a rural community in Nepal. We work to tackle poverty alleviation, orphan care. We empower women. We kind of look at the whole child in a region where children are really suffering and try to give them absolutely everything they need to be safe, educated, loved, and grow up to thrive and hopefully become change makers. We've been working in Surkhet, Nepal for, 13 years now. And we run a school, a women's center, a sustainable farm, a safe house for young women, and a children's home for orphan children.
Yeah, and I can hear some of them playing in the background now. So that's that's you guys. You guys definitely have your hands full. It sounds like. So one of the reasons I'm trying to remember how I even found out about what you guys were doing. I think it was somebody shared a video on Facebook or something, and it really caught my attention just because I think I was either at the beginning of my own travel journey, for lack of a better term, or I was about to start. And I kind of heard your story about how you were like 18, 19, backpacking, and you ended up in Nepal. And kind of I don't want to say came up with the idea, but really like you came up with you found the inspiration or something along those lines to get started on this, opening the school and everything else that it's turned into.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I didn't mean to put a lot of pressure on you on your travel, though. No. I wonder what's going on. That's kind of how it started. I grew up in suburban New Jersey on a cul-de-sac, just a normal middle-class family. I went to public school, and like many of us kids in New Jersey, playing sports and doing all the things that young people do, I had a lot of pressure on me to go to college and get a scholarship, and was very convinced that was the fast track to success and kind of how our culture defines success. And long story short, at the end of my senior year, after I'd been accepted to college and things were looking like they were going to go in the right direction, I just woke up one morning and was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea who I am on the inside. I have no idea what I want to be or what I want to do. And I'm about to go spend way too much money on an education when I've never even really left, New Jersey. And I don't know, I think at that sort of crossroads and grappling with some really serious questions about myself and my coming of age, I just decided that maybe traveling would help me kind of learn about myself and experience another culture and another way of doing things, and also just like get me out of the box and the bubble that I was in. So I signed up for a gap year program. Gap years they call it a year off. A lot of us like to call it a year on. But you just go and you sign up for a program and you do a lot of cultural immersion. And the program that I did had us scuba diving and learning about sea coastal ecosystems and doing stream restoration in New Zealand and living on a Buddhist monastery, learning about meditation. It was really just about kind of self-discovery through travel. And then there were some sort of service elements to it as well, but again, not really the focus. And for the second part of the year, I loved kids. I had babysat a lot growing up. I was this camp counselor and all of the things. And I just really wanted to be somewhere where I could work with kids and be of service, and just working with a mentor and working with the program just by, 100 chances happening and 100 right and left turns, I ended up in northeastern India. And I was working with Nepalese refugees at a time when I couldn't even pinpointed Nepal on a map. Little did I know that there was a civil war happening. And so that's kind of how I was introduced to Nepal as a country and a region. I was working with refugees across the border, and through an amazing program there, and kind of started to learn and ultimately wanted to go backpacking to Nepal myself.
So one of the questions that I have is like reading your story, you said that there was a little I think it was a little girl or a little boy that you met that really kind of pushed you in the direction of putting your attention on Nepal. And in regards to like the rest of your story, I was thinking about when I was like that age, 18 years old. I'm like, man, where were you at to like tell me to go like buy a backpack and like sign up for one of these programs? Because I think it's something that's definitely relatable to most people that, I think so, at least, that are, 18 years old. You don't necessarily know what you want to do, or you don't really I don't feel like a lot of people know themselves, what they like, what they don't like. And then, so I think taking that approach, the gap year, and kind of figuring things out probably isn't a bad idea for a lot of people to do before they commit to something. Cause it's really hard. Even, I'm 31 now, and, still I have those questions like, what is it that I want to do when I grow up or get older, So I think that it's, what do you think it was that really, instead of taking that typical path, instead of, just being like, well, I'll figure it out when I'm in school, what do you think it was that pushed you to do the travel, the gap year, and to give back with the students and sorry, go ahead and take it from there.
Yeah. I think so. I'm definitely not the kid that was like, I'm going to go make a difference and like put a pin on a map and like, I'm going to go there and help kids. Like, this desire of me to travel was 100% like selfish in the sense. And it was like, honestly, like, we have to talk about privilege too here. Like, I had an option of either going to college, and my parents encouraged, and supported the idea to travel and to, so yeah, there was an element of privilege there, because not everyone can just jet off for a year with a backpack. And yes, I worked for it and I babysat and I spent most of my own money and everything and saved up for that. But still, like, so there's that. But I started to question the system, this system that had been ingrained and shoved down my throat from the time I was 7, 8, 9 years old, that to be successful, you have to go to college. And then when you really dig into that, in U.S. culture, look at college prices. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what we're doing is sending, young people to go on this journey of self-discovery that costs so much money.
Yeah.
and that our parents and our loans are expected to pay for. And I just started to look at it and be like, what? Like, that's going to help me? Like, going and spending, 50, 60,000 a year of college debt to like figure out who I am. And so it was that like fear, I think, of like, that doesn't make sense. And
Yeah.
I remember when I started to talk about the idea of just traveling and taking off for a year, my guidance counselor called me down into the office and told me I was making a huge mistake. She was like, this is a mistake. You should go to college. And right when she said that, I was like, okay, you know what? Like, it just even made me question it even more. Like, what's the big deal taking a year off and not going straight to college? Like, who cares, you know? So I think it was that. And then, and just like look at our culture as a whole and how we hold education is really important, but not in that. It doesn't always have to look like that, I don't think. And when you look at why there's, you know, kids with drugs and alcohol and, you know, what happens on college campuses, I think it is a reflection that maybe we're not doing it exactly the right way that it should be done.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother conversation.
Right. No, I agree with you on a lot of that stuff too. Cause it's, I mean, even from, you know, you definitely unpacked a lot there, with going to college and like even the debt. I'm sure there's a lot of people that get into their like mid 20s, late 20s, 30s, but you're kind of stuck for a while once you pile up the debt, and they might want to give back. They might want to travel. They might want to do more self-discovery later on. But, you know, when you've made that commitment to go down that path of self-discovery that does put you in debt for a long time, makes it kind of tough to do this stuff. So it's I don't know. It's definitely a system that, you know, maybe it works for some people, but, you know, for others, it can kind of, it can kind of get them stuck a bit, but so.
Oh yeah. I think that golden handcuffs, that's definitely where it begins. Like, okay, well, I want to travel now, but I've got all this college debt to pay off and pressure to get a job and it definitely creates this cycle and this hamster wheel of like, go, get on the right track. If I don't do this, then that's going to happen. Then that's going to happen. Then I'm going to be a failure. And we're afraid, I think, in culture of doing anything different. And I think that first step for me as an 18-year-old was saying like, no, like, I'm going to take a step aside for a second. And that was the gap year. And at the time, I think it was really brave, and I'm proud of myself, and I'm lucky that I had that opportunity, and that my parents even like supported and encouraged it, because it was the best thing ever. And I just to cut to the end of the story, I have not gone back to college, and I have a life and a career that is so fulfilling, and a job that I completely love. And I've learned more about this field of work, like so there's lots of ways to get to that destination, which is just finding something that you're passionate about it, and that hopefully makes the world a little bit better.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And one of the, you know, it's being able to really, you know, make that choice when pretty much everybody around you is telling you that it's not a good idea. I mean, it's not responsible based on like society's standard for success, you know? And it even over I haven't been abroad as much as you have since you've been over in Nepal for quite some time, haven't you? Yeah,
12, 13 years.
Yeah, just a short couple of years. So yeah, I mean, it's when you see how kind of the rest of the world lives and how they define success in other areas, at least for me, seeing that has really changed my perspective. I'm back home in the US for a short period of time now before jumping off into some other things overseas. But I don't know, seeing how we define success here, and how we kind of, I don't know, it's almost like we keep encouraging people to make the same, I'm probably just going to say bad decisions that we make, just because that's how we were kind of taught as well. I don't know if I should call them bad decisions, but it's like making choices before you really understand why you're making them, without the intention behind them. And I think that seeing, you know, that there's other ways of doing it, other options is like a huge motivator for people to go down a different path. And I'd really like to continue to talk about like intention and whatnot, but I'm really curious about, I brought it up a few minutes earlier where, you were in Nepal and you're backpacking and you met the child that really kind of led you to was one of the pivotal dominoes to getting you to where you are now. Do you want to maybe share what it was about that, what happened in that situation that really pushed you to go that direction? Because I feel like with who you are as a person and your ambition and all that, you probably could have, picked a place that needed help and started something, with like a different cause or with children somewhere else. So what do you think it was about Nepal and everything that happened there that made you choose to go that direction?
Yeah. So, to go back to that moment in time, and there was a series of moments. You don't just up and move to Nepal and adopt a bunch of kids, but
yeah.
So I'm in India and I'm following all the events, and I just become so, meeting kids and refugees sleeping under pieces of plastic by the side of the road and hearing their stories, and I eventually befriended my friend Sunita, and she had left her village during the sort of climax of the civil war and hadn't been back. And in Nepal at that time, there was an armistice and the border was opened up. And so the two of us decided to go on a trip to go find her village. And I packed up that backpack and we get on a long bus. And it was on that trip that I was, you take in a lot of the stories and I was inspired. I mean, I felt a really deep connection. Everyone who comes to Nepal just feels like, oh my gosh, these people are amazing. The landscape's amazing, resilience, strength, natural beauty, simplicity. That's kind of what I think this country really stands for. But for me, that moment was on a dry riverbed. I was just crossing over through this little trading post town, and I looked across the riverbed and saw a few dozen children breaking rocks. And these kids were 3 years old, 5 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old. And I'd seen a lot in that, year and a half or so of traveling, but this is what I just locked eyes with this little girl, and it was like seeing the differences, but also her smile. She smiled at me and she said, "Namaste, didi." And it just stopped me in my tracks to see a little 5-year-old girl breaking rocks. I think I saw a piece of myself and thought about, reflected on my life and everything that I'd been given. And then to just see a baby, a 5-year-old whose entire day involves taking big rocks from a riverbed and breaking them into little pieces with hopes to sell them for $1 to survive. That was it. At that point, it felt easier to stay and try to do something than to just turn around and go back to college. And so that was when the wheels really started turning. And that little girl, her name's Hema, and she became the first little girl who we enrolled into school.
Oh, that's awesome. And she's probably mostly grown up now, I would say, right?
Yeah, she's doing great. Yeah, she's in our high school now. Just to more context for that time, a huge problem was especially girls and young women not having access to education. And if you really look deep rooted at these issues surrounding poverty and cycles of violence and cycles of war and people not having their most basic human needs and rights met, usually it comes down to education, and that education is one of the easiest ways to stop the cycle. There's been so much research done by economists and development studies folks and international development, and that's just a really key factor in giving people equal access, and then in turn having them safer and having their needs and rights met, and kind of changing that future trajectory and stopping the cycle. So seeing that riverbed and also reading what I was reading and being passionate about what I was becoming passionate about is when I just started to put it all together and was like, well, this is an easy fix. These kids aren't in school. We can put them into school one by one. And of course it wasn't that simple, which is why I'm still here 13 years later. But the innocence of that moment and like, okay, kids breaking rocks by riverbeds. If they could just go to school, it was the right thing to do. Their days would be better. They could put a uniform on. They could be in a safe place. We could just figure this out and start from there.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems really simple when you put it like just put one kid in at a time, you know. So it's instead of being like I'm going to start a school and like a women's center and so it's I liked how you put that where it's really just starting like with one person at a time. And so from a personal standpoint, I've asked myself this question quite a bit, and because I've spent time in a lot of areas where there's been a lot of like war and suffering and things, and you see how it's affected the people there, and one of the most shocking things to me is like how nice the people are in these areas. I just was blown away by it. I was like, man, how can you guys be so hospitable for what you've been through? It's just totally crazy. But the question that I ask myself a lot, or that I've been asking myself a lot really is, like when is that like tipping point where there's like that thing, that, I'm so drawn to helping or to being involved in, like, when does that happen where, like that's the thing that I want to put my energy into, like supporting or being a really big part of this project. Cause I've seen a lot of these things, a lot of these environments and these, different problems that I could invest my time in. And I'm volunteering with a couple, humanitarian projects right now to kind of try to find something. But I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, because that's something I've really, like, since I feel like my eyes were opened a lot to these challenges or issues in certain areas, and I don't know, I'm not sure where to put my where to put my energy or my focus yet.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I get this question all the time, and I feel really lucky, like to have found that thing for myself. I realize how lucky and blessed and what a privilege it is. And it's interesting. I feel like, well, I'm definitely not a proponent for just upping and traveling and planting yourself somewhere and trying to change things. It's like the right series of, I think what happened for me over the last 10 years was just a series of events and things turning and going in the right direction. And at the same time, we can't just see things and see violence and children suffering and turn the other way and just be like, there's too much. And that's the issue right now in the world. There is so much. Like, I'm anxious just turning on the news and seeing the bees going extinct and the plastic in the ocean and air pollution and global warming and inner city kids in, right near where I grew up in Newark who, it's just endless, right? Like thousands of things that we could dig into and make a difference, and to choose one thing. And, I really resonate with that question when people ask me like, oh, I want to do something, but I don't know where to start, because there's so much to do. And yet it's hard to kind of find that path and dig in and find your niche and find your place and how to make this world better. Especially when you're not like a professional or specialized at something. And so I guess I wish I had a really simple guide and a really answer, but I think it's what guided me in those early years was intuition and feeling. It was this feeling inside of myself, like, oh, this is it. It got me, I didn't want to sleep at night. I just wanted to read about it. And I wanted to find my people and research the heck out of it. I think we have to go in to any scenario with lots of questions. I wanted to understand the local people. I wanted to find out who else was working in the field. I think in nonprofits in general, there's not a lot of collaboration. Everyone gets in their own little like tunnel and their own thing. And I wanted to know everyone else working in the field and what their thoughts were. And I think there needs to be more of that, like more collaboration. But yeah, my advice is to listen to that inner guide. Like where is that, what's that thing? Where is that connection happening? Where's the synergy? And then go for it. And it doesn't have to be like this big step. I hate being the poster child for this because I'm like the kid that moved to Nepal and dropped everything, but I don't feel like the world's going to change with that. It needs everybody just where they are, little by little, step by step, digging into these issues, being a voice, being an advocate. Those of us who are privileged because we're white or we're male or we grew up in suburban New Jersey or we're free because we haven't, and we're educated, like it's us being a voice and a conduit for those who don't have those opportunities, getting them to the table. So I think what's guided me, long answer to the question, is reading, knowing my area, knowing my field, knowing where I need to like bring in other professionals. Was like a lot of this work was, I had to build a team to do it. And that team is mostly Nepali. And I was just one piece of a big puzzle. I'm a co-founder. First of all, I have a Nepali co-founder, Tot Bahadur Mullah. He was an orphan himself. He grew up in Nepal. He has this incredible story, and he's been kind of the cornerstone of this project. And so I'm a piece of it. And I think find your people, read your books, get your knowledge, and just start somewhere and see where it takes you. At some point, you just have to jump in and dive in and go for it and try for something. Even if it's like registering people to vote, like that's important. There's a place for that. There's the Gretas, and then there's the like everyday, people who are just like using reusable shopping bags to save the planet. Like there's a place for all of us. And I really believe in that concept of everybody doing their little thing or things.
Yeah. And if I could put a word on kind of like bundle up everything into one word, it'd be like find what you're like enthusiastic about. So instead of just, and this is kind of a place where I've settled a bit. I see a lot of these problems and struggles and stuff. I'm like, and I could do something, but if it's not something that I'm, like you said, if I'm not enthusiastic about staying awake late at night reading about the problem, or, really excited about connecting with other people in the industry, then maybe I need to, that's somebody else's thing, like my thing or your thing, like you said, is a thing that's like you wake up in the morning and it's the first thing you think about. And maybe once you start to see and experience those things, then it's time to focus on that specific area. And you kind of jumped into another question. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did you want to comment on that?
I was just gonna also say, like, look at what your gifts are. Like, look at what you're good at. Like, if you're a doctor, you have so much to give. If you're really good at web design, like if you're a good writer, like there's so many parts and pieces to this. And the nonprofit world in general, development work, it's a great field to work in. And I encourage everyone to like just get involved in something and see what you have to give.
Yeah, and that was a lead into one of the questions I wanted to ask you is with how, like, so as I would assume that I'm a fairly average person in general with like normal, fairly, when I'm in the US, I have a fairly normal like day-to-day life. How is it that somebody can really, I'm trying to figure out how I can phrase this in a way that that'll make sense, but it's like, how can we actually like, so what you're doing it on you're doing it pretty much all day, every day on a fairly impactful scale in Nepal, in the area you're in. How can how can the average person in their own community start to really give back, make a difference, or contribute? I'm trying to think of maybe some examples of, like you said, it's getting people registering to vote. I'm trying to think of a way to frame the question that's like, okay, well, maybe go down to the school and volunteer with like the Big Brothers, Big Sisters programs, stuff like that. Do you have any advice for people on how they can get involved?
Yeah, I do. I think, well, the first thing that it resonated when you said like, oh, I'm just a regular guy. There's someone I really admire, and they're a famous filmmaker, and he goes off and tries to inspire other filmmakers to make films. His name's Mark Duplass. And when I met him, he's like, just so you know, I'm like a standard B- kind of guy. Like, there is nothing special about me. And I laughed so hard because like we all assume, like, people look at me and they think that I grew up in a teepee and I was like raised like going and doing all of these like, special things, and that Mother Teresa was my idol, and like all of these assumptions. And the number one thing that people say when they meet me is, you're so normal. Like, and I always, it's like the best, it's a compliment, and it's not, like they're just like, you're so much more normal than I thought you'd be. Like, and that and I love that. I think it's great. Like, no, there's so much room for the normals, those of us who are normal, the standard B minuses, like, find your thing. Like, it's Big Brothers and Sisters. You can be, there's this organization I love called Crisis Text Line. Like, they look for volunteers all the time for suicide prevention. Like, the counselors on the other end of the phone who receive texts from young people thinking about suicide. There's, environmental groups. There's schools that need volunteers. There's, if you're just in the, just in it, like in the sludge, just trying to make money. And there's a place in philanthropy for the people who write the checks to the nonprofits who do the work. It's raining right now, so you're going to hear the rain in the background. It's like monsooning. So I was saying, like, there's a place for everyone. And it's the everyday conscious human being who's living their life with as much compassion and give back and just doing the right things as a steward and human being on this earth. And then there's like the technical side of things, of donating your time, serving on a board, giving your skill, donating goods, finding, 10 nonprofits in the area that you're passionate about. There's a place for everyone. And the most important thing is just to realize that you matter. Like, you matter and you can make an impact. Like, these kids would not be here having everything that they have and having their lives changed and the cycle changed without 10,000 people who have stopped and done something and taken one act or given us that $5. So there's so many endless opportunities, and just start.
Yeah, it's just, you just have to kind of find a place to start, It's it's just start. That's
There's a quote.
Oh, go ahead.
That's the quote.
That's the quote.
Just start / Trevor and Maggie.
Yeah. I was like, there you go. That wraps up the whole interview into a one line. Okay, so I'm trying to think of if there's any other questions around that, but I think that we're pretty good. Man, it sounds like it is coming down like crazy there, which is. Are you gonna have to go to higher ground or anything? Or are you good?
I'm okay. I'm good.
All right. So it sounds like you guys have, we've talked about, how you got started traveling, how that kind of shifted into where you are now, what you guys are working on there with the school, the women's center, all the stuff you have going on, how everyone else can kind of find their place. and just getting started, finding how they can help in their own communities. What, I guess the question I have for you is, well, I have like two more questions, but one is, what's next for you guys? What are you going to do next?
Wow. Yeah, so we have this program and these programs that we built over the last 10 years that focuses on the whole child. And when you take a child like Hema, we'll use her as an example. Hema needed, she needed food. She needed to be safe. She needed to be protected from child marriage. She needed a haven and a school to come every day. She needed to become literate. She needed to play soccer and, sports do so much. She needed a library. She needed her mom. She was a single mom to get training and empowerment skills and a vocation so that her mom could earn a living. And when you look at what a whole child needs to thrive and, socially, emotionally, financially, getting on their own 2 feet with a skill so that they can ultimately, contribute and give back and stand on their own 2 feet. That's kind of what our model is based on. There's a few pillars. One is just gender equality, getting women access and young girls access and enrolled in primary school, keeping children, the most vulnerable children, safe, educated, and loved. And sustainability, because, if we don't have a planet and clean water and health and, a safe environment and clean environment and, a world for the kids to live in, then what are we doing anyway? Yeah. So there's quite a few things that we do. It's multifaceted, and we really feel like we've developed a blueprint and a how-to guide, and there's so many people who want to do this work. So we want to take what we've created, the children's home, the safe house, the women's training program. We have an early childhood center. We have a school. We have a sustainable farm, and we want to have it be open source and shareable and a place where people can come and learn and take that model and hopefully spread it around. And I think development just needs more collaborative, idea sharing and open source models and realizing what works. And we really feel like we've nailed it in the last couple of years. We're not completely there yet, but we want to just export and have people come and learn and hopefully spread this work. And with the idea that we just have to, we're letting our world's children down. We just have a world where children are suffering, and the end result is not good. That's where the war is. That's where poverty continues, violence. It's if you look at it, it's because it can almost always trace back to a child not being cared for, incarceration. It always comes down to things going in the wrong direction at some point where a child's needs weren't.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a really good point on that. I think that we could be doing a lot better with the children, and I think that sometimes it's tough to see what they're going through. Or it's tough to understand what they're going through unless you've actually seen it, in person. It's one thing when you see a infomercial on TV where it's donate money and whatnot. But then when you actually, I don't know, when you see I can think of some situations where I've just seen children digging for food. It's and you're just oh, I don't know. It just kind of, you can't unsee that, you can't unexperience witnessing that. And then, like you said, you can't really, once you see it, it's, how do you turn your back on it? So I guess I just wonder how we can get more people to see these, these kids and to understand the suffering that's going on without taking them there and showing it to them in person.
Yeah, we have turned our back on it, and we are so easy to forget how we I think there's a lot of distractions, and there's a lot of ways that we're able to not face the truth that our human family, children, and our planet is really suffering and really hurting. And I feel that we, consume and buy more and more and more, and we get jobs to survive and to protect our own and to draw, put up fences around what we choose to care about and who we, who control what we can control. And it's hurt us, and it's been to the detriment of the human family. And I was saying, I don't know if I have an answer. I only know what's worked for us and for the children here in this little corner of Nepal. But I know that we're doing a lot of things that we need to turn around if we're gonna give our children what they really truly need. And to me, nothing's more important than that. Nothing's more sacred than that. Nothing's more urgent than that. It's just taking care of our kids and our children.
Yeah. I agree with you, and I really see why you're in the role that you're in now. So it makes a lot of sense. Just from our conversation, you definitely have a passion for kids, which is really cool to see.
All right. Thank you.
Last question for you, and then I'll let you continue with your day. Last little bit of like words of inspiration for the audience. If somebody's out there listening right now, and they're listening and they can hear the kids playing in the background, they've heard you talk about the challenges that you've helped face. What advice or words of inspiration do you have to them to get out there and start giving back?
What did we say earlier? It was just start. Start where you are. Use what you have. Hold our sight on a vision and believe that the change is possible. Believe that we can live in a world where children are not suffering, where children's most basic human needs and rights are being met, where children are fed, and where our grandchildren look at us in shock that there was an era where children were not safe and not cared for and not, held in the highest regard and of importance. And I want us all to believe in that vision so that we can start to get there. Because I think right now, some of us just don't even believe it's possible. I know I doubt it every single day. I'm like, are we going to make it? Are we going to even make it? As a humanity, but we have to believe. We have to believe that we can get there, and we have to just start.
Right, just start. I think that's just in whatever way you can. That is a wrap for this week's show. I really enjoyed the conversation I had with Maggie. She's really an inspiring person, even though she says she's no Mother Teresa. She just really makes me think about how I can do better, how I can contribute more, and just doing so even just for one person. Now, if you wanna do something to help out the cause that Maggie's a part of, BlinkNow, we threw the link over in the show notes, so you can check that out and give a few dollars if you feel so kind. That'll be the only thing that I ask this week is, instead of taking the time to give us a review or do anything else, download any of our PDFs, anything like that, just head on over to the link in the show notes for BlinkNow and give a few bucks. Support what they're doing over there. They're really helping young girls, young women to have a equal shot at education, healthcare, all those things. So that's all I got for you this week, everyone. And I look forward to you stopping by next time.